I'm Isabelle Gonthier, Chief Assessment Officer at PSI Services, and I invite you to delve deep into the world of testing with me. Every episode, I'll be on the virtual couch with experts from the testing industry, engaging in conversations about the latest developments in our field. Your quest for testing knowledge starts here. Well, welcome to this episode of the Tried and Tested podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about shaping the future of nursing specialty certification. And we're here in Alexandria, Virginia at the ABNS Conference. And I have the pleasure of having as guest Kevin Letz. Kevin Letz is with the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners Certification Board, and he's also the president of the American Board of Nursing Specialties. ABNS. And we have Margaret Erickson. She's with the American Holistic Nurses Credentialing Corporation, and she's also the president of the Accreditation Board for Specialty Nursing Certification, ABSNC. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Excellent. So, first of all, I always start with the same question because it's really nice to kind of understand where people come from in terms of from a professional standpoint. So, I'm interested in hearing a little bit about your story as it relates to certification credentialing, your journey. Of course, there's going to be like the element of the professional journey, but how did you get into assessment and credentialing? And I'll start with you, Margaret.
I started 25 years ago. I was teaching at the University of Texas at Austin and ended up leaving there, and an opportunity came up to work for the American Holistic Nurses Credentialing Corporation. And so I started learning about credentialing. We had one exam at that time, and we have 5 now. And along the way, I got the opportunity to meet my colleagues with the American Board of Nursing Specialties and ended up getting asked if I'd be interested in working with ABSNC, which is the accreditation organization, and ended up having the opportunity to serve for the last 6 years. I just finished my last board meeting officially. Yes, I am transitioning out the end of June, but I've had the pleasure to work with people that really understand the values of setting standards, recognizing what we all have, the gifts we have in the different specialty areas, and how important it is so that we can provide optimal care for our clients.
Yeah, no, this is great. And that aspect of the accreditation as well to ensure those standards are defined and then followed from a credentialing standpoint in the nursing specialty is very important.
Very important.
Yeah,
Very
well,
important.
that's great. What about you, Kevin?
Journey's a little bit different, but some similarities. I love being a nurse, just so many different opportunities. And I've had those different opportunities, whether it's working clinically as a nurse or a nurse practitioner, and as an educator and as a dean, later as a vice president of healthcare systems, working with nursing that way. And got led to my foray about 4 years ago, working with the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners Certification Board, initially as director of certification and now as CEO. And of course, somewhat of a small community in certification, particularly with nursing certification, and was then involved in American Board of Nursing Specialties, and now as president as just part of that journey in the last 4 years. So honored to be part of that organization and also serve on the board of ABSNC since I have the role as president of ABNS. So the chance to work with Margaret, who's lives in my backyard, even very close together. So interesting, we have such perspective, and then we actually live in the same town.
Yeah, exactly. Connecting from all angles. It's interesting because, as you know, you mentioned as part of your description of your journey, you're both obviously heavily involved with ABNS and ABNSNC. So, can we talk a little bit more about what that means and how the two organizations are connected, and what that means in terms of the standards for the profession? And I'll start with Kevin this time.
And so ABNS is a membership group, if you will, of certifiers. So, our main purpose is serving as that kind of networking forum as well as an education arm in those individuals working in the area of nursing certification. So that's essentially what we are, is a small membership group of sort of that niche of individuals working within certification, specifically in nursing.
Yeah. And it's great because you mentioned that it's a small group, but it's a tight group as well in
Yes.
terms of the people getting together. We are, as I've mentioned in the opening, we're here for the conference here in Alexandria, and it's always interesting to see how people interconnect and the opportunities that it creates to exchange, network, and learn from each other's in a way.
I was going to say that ABNS provides support for the credentialing organizations, and they kind of are the meat in some ways that hold it together, provide a place we can connect and the energy and share our knowledge and learn new things. Last year was all about AI. So it's, and we each have our own area, but we really complement each other, I think, and work well together. I am with ABSNC, so our goal is to set high standards and help organizations meet those standards and get accredited. And we have different initiatives that we're talking about of how do we work together so that we can further the mission of both organizations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you've mentioned AI. So obviously it's been like for the past few years a top topic. So how does that, when you think about AI, but also technology, how is that contributing to some of the initiatives that you have, whether it's from an ABNS perspective or even like from a standard accreditation ABSNC perspective, like the leveraging the technology, moving, it's moving at a fast pace. So how does that come into play in the context of ABSNC?
I think that we had a big discussion today about AI. Everybody's having a big discussion because it's out there. Because we accredit, because we have a lot of confidential information, we were trying to figure out how to protect our clients, how to protect the confidential information that we receive. And so we worked a lot today on a policy and looking at how the policy would protect. We don't talk about them as members, but the people who are accredited with us.
Mhm.
Um, it is. I'm a holistic nurse and I work for a holistic nursing organization. So for me, AI, it's always important to have a balance between high tech and high touch. And so we were not talking about that aspect as much as how do we utilize AI to make the process easier, but also protect the clients at the same time.
Yeah, it's kind of having some of those guardrails. So leveraging the opportunities that it presents, but at the same time, kind of balancing it with protecting the information and protecting the
And it's
program.
it's so new that all of us, myself included, we're not sure which AI is free access, what would possibly interfere with the confidentiality, et cetera. So we spent a lot of time talking about it, and a lot of it was philosophical, some was detail oriented, but it all ultimately came back to protecting those that we serve.
Absolutely. And Kevin, from an ABNS standpoint, so we know Margaret mentioned last year there was a lot of conversation about AI at the conference. There is also this year, although like I think that the program is very diversified, which is nice. But how does that interplay with sort of like the role of the organization in supporting the members and the organizations in considering options around technology?
And I think it's certainly using technology to develop exams and content and use it for assessment purposes. But there's also the operations of a business. So as ABNS members are ultimately all run as a business, and we just like any professions and organizations will integrate AI and various technologies to enhance our jobs. Of course, hopefully not taking away those jobs, but certainly there'll be some upscaling that has to, or upskilling, I should say, that happens because of the use of technology as our staff transitions to having some of those things automated that they're used to doing hands on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's that it's multifaceted and being able to understand, but also being informed in terms of what to use, how to use it, the protection around, open source versus closed system, and all of those elements are critical conversations. And it's interesting to see, again, from an accreditation standpoint, you're having those conversations. You've probably seen that the NCCA Commission just released some guidance around leveraging AI from an assessment standpoint that I'm sure will interplay with some of the conversations and interrelation. It's different accreditation standards, but there's some commonalities there. So I think it's interesting to see how the industry is sort of like leveraging it, but at the same time also making sure that we are continuing to be very aware of how to protect what's being done.
Very careful.
So, Margaret, when we think about the value of certification, what the value it provides to a nurse that wants to get certified, but also to the community, can we talk a little bit more about this?
I work for the American Holistic Nurses Credentialing Corporation, and the majority of answers we get about why you value certification is not professional, it's personal. We are a volunteer credentialing organization, meaning that you don't have to be certified to practice. Whereas, like if you're an advanced practice, like a midwife or a nurse anesthetist, you have to have that certification, that licensure. Our nurses tell us that they get certified with us because that is who they are. They want to validate who they are. Now, they also get the benefits of certification professionally, like career opportunities, climbing the ladder, a salary increase, connecting with colleagues, like minded colleagues. And they all feel that being certified is not only a validation of who they are and what they do, but it's a way of sharing with clients or the patients that they work with that they have that expertise and knowledge because they believe it's important to facilitate a sense of trust and security when they're working with people.
Oh, yeah.
At the hospital level, obviously, certification, if you have more certified nurses, then it means that you have people that are validating that expertise, their experience, their skills, and their knowledge. So it's reassuring to your clients if they know that. And some of the hospitals we work with actually are building and creating programs that will help get their nurses certified because they found that there's patient satisfaction on the inventories associated with our certification. I'm not saying it's not with other certification, but because we focus on health, wellness, well-being, well-becoming, first breath through the lifespan, they're scattered in every setting and population. And so with magnet status, which is so important for so many hospitals, we now recognized as one of the certifications. And so it meets both personal and professional needs. And from a community perspective, I think it makes the community, whether it's the community of the hospital or the community clinics or people who are recommending, feel safer and more secure when a nurse is certified, regardless of the certification.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Kevin, how does that apply in terms of from an ANPCB world, but also thinking about the impact and how this impact can be potentially measured?
Yeah, I think, with nurse practitioners, as Margaret alluded to, it's required. Certification is required for licensure, but at the same time, ultimately, for the public, our patients, it does show that ultimately we're meeting this minimum competency, and that certification is measuring that minimum competency to practice. So it's in essence, for both the individual to share their extra knowledge and their competency, but it's also for the public to trust that, and knowing that we've met that and we are educated and trained in the proper way, and kind of gives that trust, if you will. We're lucky in nursing to be the most trusted healthcare profession and most trusted profession of any. But that certification gives that extra level of trust as well, knowing that individual that's taking care of you has that extra level of specialty certification, knowing that they have that additional, whether it's education or at least that additional competencies.
So they've committed to the practice, they've committed to the learning, to showing excellence, to demonstrating their skills, knowledge, and ability through obtaining the certification, which in a way kind of demonstrate their dedication and commitment to the profession.
Kind of at a community level, you might talk about it as the seal of approval,
Mhm.
that it is like the cherry on top, and it I don't want to say shows that they're qualified, but it's a badge of honor. I would say that certified nurses, whatever level, the NPs, midwives, the school nurses, the ER nurses, um, are able to say, I met those standards. As he said, it's minimum competency, but our standards are pretty high with ABSNC. It's not easy to get accredited, and there's a reason for that. It shouldn't be something that you can just slap together, and then the certification, if you do that, the certification has no value or meaning.
Well, and I like the connection you're making here between the value of certification and the value of accreditation. This is important because the accreditation is to the program to showcase that they meet high stakes standards, critical, that their program, the way they manage the program, develop the program, the assessments, and everything around it meets those critical standards. And then that helps promote the value of this program and has a direct link to that value of certification as well.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. And I think
They work together.
absolutely. And I think when you think about like your organization, and then Kevin, your organization is accredited, like your different programs are accredited. So going through that process, similar to getting certified, getting accredited shows the commitment to the industry, to your stakeholders, to your community, that you are abiding by those standards.
Renewing, because it's not just getting certified, you have to renew depending on the program, maybe every 3 years or every 5 years, so that you're keeping current, so that you know what's going on out there, and so again, that you can offer the best care possible.
Absolutely. It's not something that's once and
Once in a
done.
lifetime.
Exactly. You need to continue to maintain that competence and demonstrating that. And now a short break. Hello, tried and tested listeners and fellow testing enthusiasts. I'm Isabelle Gonthier, your guide through the fascinating world of credentialing. Each week, we dive deep with expert guests to explore the hottest topics in certification and licensure testing. If you're enjoying our journey through lifelong learning and innovation, take a moment to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you know someone passionate about testing or curious about the latest testing trends, why not share this podcast with them? It might just be the inspiration they need. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our community. Remember, sharing knowledge is one of the best ways to grow our industry together. Keep listening. So, Kevin, back to the kind of conversation around the technology and, not necessarily just about AI, but when we think about how it's impacting how nurses are trained, certified, and how technology can support them through their career. Like, any comments on that?
Just I think just like many professions, it's going to look a lot different in how we use technology, whether it's AI is certainly the bigger one that's in discussion. But if you look at other technologies, like even in my own field as a nurse practitioner, the technology of telemedicine allows me to practice, however few hours or many hours in a given week using that technology, whereas I don't have to go into a clinic or into the emergency room to practice, but I can turn on my computer and start seeing patients within a couple hours and deliver care to an individual that may have not had access to that, but also an opportunity for me to practice in that limited capacity that I have working in the other fields that I am. And I think at bedside nurses, they're used to using technology in many ways, whether it's the technology of the healthcare assessments, the readings and that technology, but the references that are available, and AI will be one of those things that's just another technology to use. But we'll certainly see that evolve over time, just like other professions. But it certainly will, I think, get to us ultimately. There will always be nursing, and nursing is a STEM, I believe. But there are many aspects that people will need from nursing that is not just the science of nursing, but also the empathy that it provides, and that one-on-one care and that relationship that you have with your nurse, which technology can't take away.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I really like what you've mentioned about access. Like, it's providing a totally like enhanced opportunity to have access to provide care to people that might not be able from a mobility standpoint. And so that element, and we see it as well, like the flip side of it in even in testing, providing access to, people in remote location that want to get certified that might not have access to a test center close by, being able to possibly consider remote proctoring and so on and so forth. It's all kind of interrelated. And that's definitely some of the key benefits of leveraging that technology.
Especially like in Texas, where it's a big state, and trying to access care when you're like in West Texas, where you might be 4, 5, 6 hours from a hospital, having that telehealth, or during the pandemic, the telehealth was a real godsend.
Yeah.
So, I have had telehealth appointments with my physician. I have to say I love them. You can wear your pajama bottoms and connect. And so I think that what Kevin brought up that's really important is we talk about the art and science of nursing, and science has to incorporate technology. It's here and it's not going away. But we also have to stay connected to our people.
Mhm.
And that requires a focus and an intent. They did a research study in Japan about robots, which I thought was fascinating, on satisfaction. And the people did not like the robots. They said, we don't want medications from our robots. Well, we know that. That's that connection that's very special. That's why we're trusted. Our intent is always to do the better good. It's not going to come with machines. So, how do we use machines so we can be more accessible, more equitable, and help people meet those needs
Yeah.
where we all win?
Absolutely. And I think that human factor, that technology can help provide more space for it, the empathy, the relationship, all of this,
Yeah.
that the connection that is so critical to your profession in a way. So very important to highlight that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, when you think about other organizations that are like in the space, not necessarily specific to nursing, but when you think about from a credentialing standpoint, so there's organizations like ICE, ATP. How do both in terms of the credentialing organization that you work with and ABNS and ABSNC, how do you get involved and how do you collaborate with other organizations like ICE and ATP? Kevin.
Yeah, I'm actually happy to report ABNS and IC just created a partnership this past year.
Great.
And I think initially that partnership is more or less just sharing information about what each organization is doing. I think I'm a member of both those organizations, and I think many are, and both have subtle differences. Certainly, ABNS is nursing specific, so you come to the events to meet fellow nurses in the certification space, whereas IC is much bigger and has other educational opportunities and different networking opportunities. But that affiliation is more or less making people aware of the benefits of each organization and the educational opportunities for each of those as well. Realizing there is some benefits in working together, and I don't think there's anything that's pins one against the other because they're such a niche. And certification is somewhat a small field as a whole, and nursing, certification in particular. So, our event tomorrow starts off, and I think we have 60 some individuals join us for this national conference, which is relatively small. If you go to IC, I think you're going to be talking about thousands of individuals, and many of those will also be at ABNS. Just that small volume.
Yeah, it's creating the additional opportunities for connection, but also leveraging resources that could be beneficial at both ends. There's resources available through ABNS, through ICE, that there's a lot of commonalities that you can really benefit from, in addition to also the events and all of that. So, how do you see that from an ABSNC
I think
perspective?
that what we gather and gain from each other is exploration and updating of what are the standards and why are they important and what's unfolding, and talking about the collaborative connections that allow both organizations to have a better understanding if there are changes. Like last year's presentations on AI were fantastic. And we are a smaller organization because we're nursing specific.
Mhm.
Okay. But there is value in understanding different worldviews and different perspectives and being able to share with each other. And I think that it's kind of like Restaurant Row. You know, people say you go to Restaurant Row because there's all this variety. And it's not that there is not enough for everybody, there is. But by having that diversity and that different perspective, everyone is richer.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I think that you're highlighting that it's really important is that the richness that it brings and in everybody benefits from
Right.
it in the end. Um, as we think about what's coming up, like the future, key trends, what would you say are trends that you feel will have or continue to have an impact on credentialing, but also from a nursing specialty standpoint, Kevin?
Well, I think we talked a lot about the trends.
Hmm.
It's just a lot about technology,
Yeah.
right? And how individuals are educated and the technology that's used, how people are assessed. And I think, we, as an organization, we are, having that discussion about how do you measure competency? It's not, just about taking an exam one time.
Hmm.
How do you show continued competency, whether it's through continuing education and or longitudinal assessment? You can get into different ways of measuring knowledge as well, not just a multiple choice questions and things of that nature,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
using virtual reality. And there's
Yeah.
just so many things that technology can be used to enhance those assessment techniques or training techniques, and learning those. And so I think that's the big discussion, of
Yeah.
course, is technology and the use of technology. And right now it's AI and other
Yeah.
bigger modalities such as that. So we'll see how it plays
Yeah.
out.
And I think what I find interesting in terms of what you're saying as well is that we can think about, yes, different ways of assessing, different ways of using the technology to sort of like, evolve in the way we're doing things. And one thing that I see a lot of potential is that, yes, the certification process, you get certified, you take the exam, you get certified. Then from a maintenance of certification standpoint, there's so many different opportunities that actually technology can offer where you can incorporate more feedback, more interaction. So it's not just again at one point in time. Okay, you collect your CE credits, you put that in the system, or you get recertified with the examination. But you have like a way of sort of like using, like we all have our phones at the palm of our hands, and being able to be able to do something like little quizzes, little activities, get the feedback, interact. AI provides those opportunity of additional interactions fairly easily in a way. So I think those are all of the considerations. Anything you want to say about transfer you?
I think that the biggest challenge we have in nursing is maintaining our connection to our humanity. I know a lot of people are like, may not think that's important, but in nursing, I think it's critically important. We're gifted with people's most sacred, vulnerable moments.
Oh yeah.
Um, and all of us, that's a gift. It's also a responsibility. And when somebody's really down and out, or they've just gotten a diagnosis, or they have a sick baby, they need that nurse who's there present with them. Do
Yeah.
they need competence? Absolutely.
Mhm.
The last thing they need is somebody who is incompetent or can't do the work in an efficient, effective way.
Yeah.
But I think that one of our challenges is sometimes we want to do things faster and better,
Mhm.
and we assume technology will get us there. And like for example, one of my concerns is charting, because I think that often some of the things that are really important are left out of charting because we have tried to streamline it. So as we're using simulation in the schools, as we're using it for assessments or maintaining competence, I think that we really need to stay grounded in who we are as a profession, because otherwise we could just replace everybody with technicians.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say technicians, I mean robots, or because some of the things probably, there's probably some way that a robot could learn to stick somebody for an IV or start an IV with all the equipment and, x-ray or whatever. But when my son was really sick, that's not who I wanted at the bedside with me.
Yeah, no,
So, it's like as we're thinking about how do we utilize technology in nursing and assessment and certification, I think we have to make sure that we keep our pulse on nursing.
And
absolutely.
I see that even just in our relationships, right? I think many of us fear the next generation is so in touch with their phones that they can't have that human connection, and they have a challenge with having that communication. But we also have to realize it is human connection, and it doesn't always need to. There doesn't need to be
There
a
are
phone in
different
the
ways.
middle.
Yeah.
Yes, and the value of that human connection, one on one with an individual in their moment, and the value of touch, for instance, and how you can feel in the person's energy in front of you. That technology removes a lot of that. So certainly a worry for many of us with the overuse of technology, taking away that human interaction.
I think that that was so beautifully said, Kevin. And I think that it's like my son is, I swear he's the phone is glued at his hip, and I think babies are born, come out of the uterus with a phone and,
Pretty much.
texting and very competent at a very young age. But that moment that you were talking about of sometimes with my son, what he wants is just to show me what he thinks is a really cool video. And so I'm like, that's not my bailiwick, but being with him in the moment, like you said, we can't always choose how we want to be with somebody. And certainly in nursing, they're the most vulnerable, it's the most difficult. You looked at what happened in the pandemic. Um, there are still ways we connect, even with technology, if we remember that we're connecting with a person and not a task.
Yeah. Well, I know, and that's the thing. It's kind of being able to interconnect, as you said, not losing sight of the importance of the human factor. And again, from a nursing standpoint, there's a lot of different tools that will help, like make the nurses, the profession, more efficient, more focused, hopefully reduce errors, so on and so forth, but never taking away the importance of
Right.
that connection and adapting, because you said it. Generations are different. There's a different type of needs,
Boy.
and the way they communicate, the way they operate is different. So that human factor allows to adapt accordingly. So,
And you have to. I mean, nursing is about going with the flow. I mean, Kevin and I both have gone with so much flow and valuing that flexibility and creativity because it doesn't matter where you work in nursing, you got to be creative because you're often, oh, the equipment breaks down, or you got to figure out how to be multitasking while meeting different needs. And I think that that is a strength of our profession that helps us deal with the challenges because there are times that I feel so disconnected from the younger generation. But when I sit and think about their worldview and their experience, it's in a very different place. And I know nursing's had challenges with the generational differences. And yet, one of the things that the younger generation, I think, has done a beautiful job is they say, I've got to have a balance in my life.
yeah.
I'm not working those, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Thank you, but I don't need the money. So that's a real gift because I remember being told I was gonna, be written up when I worked at the VA if I asked for a day off and did 7 or 10 days. And the younger generation is like, no, thanks. So that's a real gift to us.
Yeah, and it's part of that evolution and how
Yes,
things are continue to change and adapting to that. So,
right.
well, it's been a fabulous conversation, and I feel like we could absolutely continue and go on because this is such a rich topic, important. I can feel the passion from all angles, again, from a nursing professional standpoint, from a credentialing standpoint, the involvement that you have, and thank you for your dedication and involvement because I know organizations like ABNS and ABSNC need people to commit their time, their energy, provide provide their experience, expertise, and that all kind of like permeates throughout everything that's done, and back to your each of your organizations, and back to how you yourself do your work. So thank you for that, and I really want to continue the conversation. So I will encourage everyone to continue to think about that human factor, yes, from a nursing standpoint, but also across the board when we think about how we work with each other. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up, Kevin?
I just think for me, being in the nursing profession has just been tremendous. So for those out there, who have an interest, whether they're even not from that background in a different profession, I would encourage that, that consideration of getting into the nursing profession. There's such a wide variety of jobs within the profession, whether it's in education or
Yeah,
different clinics in the hospital, out on the street, so many different opportunities. So I would encourage those who maybe not had considered nursing in the past to consider it in the future or for their children or otherwise.
absolutely. Margaret, any final words?
I ditto what Kevin said. I think it's an incredible profession. To me, it's kind of like a candy store because
Yeah.
you can go and you can work, like he said, in the community clinics. You can be working in critical care. You can work as a researcher, an educator. If you love people, and if what you want to do is facilitate their greatest state of well-being, then there's a place for you in nursing, and we need you and we welcome you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your insights, your passion, and have a good conference in the next couple of days. And thank you again for your
Thank
time.
you, Isabel.
Thanks for the invite.